Back again with another This Day in History, courtesy of the History Channel. And in 1958, on this day, NASA was created. And for those of you who haven't seen my previous This Day in Histories, the History Channel sends out This Day in History. It's just a list of facts, things that happened this day in history. And oftentimes it sends me in a rabbit hole of spending way too much time figuring things out, trying to understand things. But really, it's a journey of learning and unlearning. And I bring you all along with me on that. Today's going to be a little different because we're not going on this journey of learning about NASA and when it was created and why it was created. I actually have a personal connection to NASA, and I want to share that with you all today. Some of you are aware, but I created a tool called the Table of Diversity, and it's a tool that's been in existence for about 10 years now, and it's what leaders, teams, organizations, and really just people who want to be more educated, more aware, and more action-oriented as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So in 2023, I had someone from NASA reach out to me and say, hey, we want you to come in and do a training on the Table of Diversity and intersectionality. And the science of DEI, and all of those things intertwine. And we started talking, and I was like, you know what? There are so many things that are on this version of the Table of Diversity that don't directly apply to NASA because they are a federal agency. There's just some things that are different culture-wise. So I said, well, why don't we just create a NASA-specific version of the Table of Diversity that, not only is relevant to NASA, but to any federal agency. And that's what we did in 2023. We created a NASA-specific version of the Table of Diversity, and they invited me in to deliver a keynote presentation for a day-long conference that they were having for their employee resource groups and anyone who wanted to attend around diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. That in and of itself is cool because, what do you mean you want me to come in and deliver a keynote presentation for your day-long, DEIA conference? Of course, that's an easy yes. But that was a highlight, but that was just one of many highlights. They actually invited me and my entire family to come a day early and just explore and get a tour of the campus. And that was just mind-blowing. There were so many different things that I just didn't know or didn't think about. And it wasn't until I was in the space that I was like, this is a big deal. So the first thing that we did, we had our own private tour guide who, took us around to the campus. And the first place we went was the astronaut training facility. And this is a pool that the astronauts train in. And now let me ask you, have you ever thought about how astronauts train? And I'll tell you, I didn't. I just thought that training was just on the job. You get up in space and you're figuring it out from there. Hopefully you're prepared. But they train underwater. And it's not like a, 1 hour training session. They actually train for 8 to 12 hours at a time. And it's nonstop. They go underwater. They're performing different tasks and activities that they would be doing in space. And it's nonstop, no breaks. And I was like, whoa, this is intense, but it makes sense, right? They're going up into space. They have to be overly prepared for whatever may come. But this was really interesting because astronauts were training while we were there. So we got to see them underwater performing their various activities. And we were actually down there, not in the water, but down on the bottom platform. And we're able to see them doing their thing, which was super cool. After that, we got to tour, and we were in Houston, by the way. So we got to tour the command center. And this is the command center that has now been retired. They have a new command center that is all, up to date and fancy. But this is the command center that is still intact in the way that it was when we first landed on the moon. And you can see kind of down on the table, the phone, that's a throwback in time. Over in the corner down here, they have an ashtray with cigarettes. And what you don't see in this picture, over to the side, they have a clothes rack that has just jackets and shirts and things. And those are actual clothes from people who were in the room at the time. And while you're there, there's a presentation. The presentation includes what was showing on the screens right here while the astronauts were landing on the moon. Then there's you can see the two-way conversation that's happening between the president and the astronauts as they're landing and, communicating and all of that. And it was unreal, as someone who, of course, I wasn't alive during that time. And so I had no real firsthand understanding of it. To be in that space was, again, it was mind-blowing. So after a full day of going to various facilities and, doing the tour, and one of the highlights as we were leaving the command center is that my son was 3 at the time, my daughter was 1, and I have no doubt in my mind that core memories were formed for him that day. But as we were leaving command center, there was a replica, a model of a rocket kind of in the lobby of the command center. And my son, when he saw it, he pointed to it and he said, "Rocket, R-O-C-K-E-T." And we were all just like, well, huh? What? First off, I was like, how did you know how to spell rocket? And shout out to his daycare for preparing him for this moment. But I have no doubt that this experience laid the foundation for whatever is to come for him, because he showed up and showed out. I mean, he got pins and he was just the star of the show in so many ways. And I know that he's going to do big things. Speaking of doing big things, I mean, do y'all see? I had posters all over the campus that was advertising, and they have my picture on there. They got my name, a little bio. But this was on March 27, 2024. So we spent most of 2023 working on the table of diversity for NASA. We talked about, what is the day going to look like, but also how does my keynote presentation kick off the day and challenge everyone to think through a different lens. And then my son saw this first and he was like, "Mama, is that you?" And then I was just so super excited to take pictures with it. And then the big time came, and this picture really doesn't do justice to the size and just expansiveness of this room. But this was the stage that I was speaking on, with, the NASA logo right there in the background as I'm up on stage. And I mean, it was just an amazing experience. But as you enter into this room, along both sides of the room on the walls, there's flags, and there's flags from so many different countries, all represented in this room. And there were people who were in the room, there were people who were joining virtually, and I couldn't see the chat, but I was told that the chat was just on fire as I was presenting. And it's always a good feeling to know that, as you're presenting, people are engaged and excited and have comments and feedback as you're going along that process. Now, there's one thing about me. I'm going to wear a power suit. And this is one of my favorites, this bright orange suit. And I am standing here with Vanessa. She is the head person of NASA in Houston. And she's actually the first Black woman to be in this role in Houston. And so it was a huge honor to know that, not only was this their first DEIA conference event, full day event, but, also I got to do this knowing that it was happening under the leadership of the first Black woman in this role. So that was just an immense honor. And there were so many things that just reaffirmed for me that this was where I was supposed to be. And it was just an amazing experience. And one that unfortunately ended this year, as we had planned to, work across other NASA agencies across the country to deliver this same content, to do this same work. But unfortunately, DEI was cut out, and that meant that I was done. But not really, because I'm still doing this work and I'm still super excited about it. And unfortunately, folks in the federal agencies do not get to see my brilliance.